very dear to my heart. We talked about it on the show last week. We talked about Brother Gil Noble, scholar Gil Noble, and that there's been a transition, Lori, in terms of his show, Like It Is. And I want to kind of talk about that, talk about his particular tribute, or lack of it, and what's the community response that should be on that particular issue.
Yeah, well, from what I understand, Like It Is his trademark, and it's owned by him, so they would not continue the show with that name.
For people around the country that might not know what it is.
Well, Like It Is a show that started back in the 60s, and was a show that was given to Gil Noble as a reason to, believe it was after either Martin Luther King or Malcolm X was assassinated. And there were riots up in Harlem, and they wanted to try and, I guess, calm the people down, and so they gave them this black programming. And Gil Noble, in his infinite wisdom, interviewed many politicians, musicians, activists, grassroots people, educators, every walk of life he brought in front of us every Sunday, educating us as to what was going on in our community and who we are as a people. And he was given this show with the understanding that he didn't have to worry about sponsorship or ratings or anything like that, that this was for the public good.
Community service.
Community service. And this show has been a terrific asset because it gives us the ability to learn from our own living rooms every Sunday. And we saw people like, from entertainers like Sammy Davis Jr. and Lena Horne and Sarah Vaughan, and all these people talk about the history of jazz and, their experiences that they went through, discriminatory and otherwise, in their field. Educators that talk to us about the history of African people from the very beginning, before we came to America, on up through the civil rights era, etc. Like I said, politicians, Adam Clayton Powell, everyone you could possibly think about has walked through the show. And I think his daughter mentioned, with the exception of the fact that he never got to interview Malcolm X, but he was a strong follower of him. All of these people, athletes, etc., have been a part of our lives and have taught us what it is to be African people. The problem now is that Mr. Noble has retired due to a stroke that he has. And his daughter's explaining that her wish is that the show continue in the vein where the archives are not lost, that they actually either get it into schools through a nonprofit, or they get into a library of some sort, somewhere where it can still be shown. In my opinion, I think we have to go beyond that. It would be great to have that, but I think the advantage of people being able to turn on their TV every Sunday and just watch the show and be educated and refer other people to the show to see it is a benefit. And in this day and age of technology, where people want to sit in front of TV or get on the computer, to get their information, we need to make it as easy as possible. In order for the current generations of young people or older people who are not familiar with this information to get it, we need to have some sort of continuation of the show. The tribute, I thought, was nice that they had individuals who said what Gil Noble meant to him, but in my opinion, I think the clips that were shown did not reflect the ideology of the man. I mean, even those of us who've watched Like It Is for years would recognize that even the clips that they showed, we could think of clips from the same shows that would be more representative of his ideology, which was educating young people, educating us in general about our history and our background, exposing us to jazz and musicians and artists, etc., and the greatness of us as African people. And I don't really think that was accurately conveyed during the show.
And how all of those things tie into the movement of black people. I think that's a key thing. Because people kind of think there's a disconnect between jazz and civil rights. There's a disconnect between, athletes and civil rights. Maybe there's a disconnect now that doesn't exist. But there was a black consciousness that existed when we were in the quote-unquote struggle. And one brother said to me, he said maybe it was better when we was on the plantation, because that way we fought together. When we got off of it, we forgot that there still was a struggle going on. And another brother said to me, well, I don't know if we even got off of the plantation. But the one thing that we got to see every week was a beautiful, intelligent, articulate black man standing up for black people and presenting issues of importance to us. and presenting it to not only to us but to the greater community, so they understood that this is just not some person griping, but there are real issues that are out there that are being perpetrated on this community, and but there's real strength within this community. There are real people that are out here trying to resolve and attack these issues. And so when you have a tribute like that, you cannot put a tribute like that. This particular tribute, I'm sorry, and I'll say it since people don't want to say it, it was a rush job. It wasn't done. It was kind of like scattered and patched together. It was incomplete, and it didn't speak to anything about who this great man was.
Yeah.
And it was shameful. It was 100% shameful. And Channel 7, ABC, you should really have your head down. And Laurie Stokes should be ashamed of something, even associate with such a program, knowing the lineage he comes from.
Because even Gil Noble, the genius of him in his position as an interviewer was his ability to let his guests shine. He would ask a question and bring out the issues that needed to be brought out in the vein of whatever the topic was, whether it was current events or it was history or things of that nature. And for those of us who've gotten the opportunity to meet him, you understand what the show meant to him, how important it was, and when his daughter conveyed the fact that she really wants this to continue so that the archives are not lost, that's a very important point, because many of us who've seen Eyes on the Prize, we know that 30 years later, very few people are exposed to actual footage of our history. You're actually seeing Muhammad Ali speak or seeing Adam Clayton Powell speak.
And Fred Shuttlesworth.
Yeah, there's individuals growing up, on Adam Clayton Powell Boulevard that have no idea about the greatness of the man. And when you actually get to see that in the person's own words,
it's wonderful.
It's a very moving thing.
Right.
I think I think a second tribute, that's not rushed and not choppy should be done. In addition to doing whatever we can do to continue the show, because Gil Noble's legacy over the 40 years that he did the show, I think that cannot be understated in terms of the way he's educated. And if those of us who've seen the show over the years, both those of us who are in New York now or those former New Yorkers that have moved to other states, we could all express to ABC very clearly how much this show meant to us. We'll
put the information at the bottom of the screen so you can express yourself.
And he interviewed young and old. I remember seeing Talib Kweli being interviewed on a show where Talib Kweli was explaining that we have to understand that a lot of young people who were born, 20, 30 years after the civil rights movement need some adjustment to really understand this because they haven't seen it. Or people like Chuck D from Public Enemy, who explained that it wasn't until in the height of Public Enemy's fame that they were able to travel around the world and see how other nations looked at black men. How what impression they got from the media of black men and get a greater global understanding. So until we can get that information conveyed to those who haven't been exposed to it at all or those who've only been exposed to it on a limited basis, I think we'll have a problem.
You want to share your thoughts?
Yeah, Laurie articulated it so well, so competently about that show. I remember when Alambe Brath was being interviewed by Like It Is, and the next day I happened to be at the Carver Bank, and he walked in, and people all around the neighborhood, I saw you on Like It Is. I saw you. I'm just talking about the aspect of the community following that show. That's what you said about Sunday afternoon. Just to be able to relax with the church folks. It's the church time, but a lot of people, if they weren't in the street, they were out watching that show. And Lambe Brath was he was just smiling like it was such an honor to be on that show and to see the people all around give him accolades for just being there.
It almost seems as if ABC is oblivious to the real connection that this show has to the community, or maybe they just don't care. But there needs to be you making them understand the importance of a show like this. I don't know what the name of this new show is, and I already told you I have no intention of ever watching it. But I don't think they need a new show. I think they have exactly what they need. They have Like It Is, and that's what we should be looking for. But we have to take a break. We'll be back with more black men screaming in just a moment.